All right. Whether you're ready for it or not, it's here. Welcome to Stormbreaker's Weather Report, Episode 6, the podcast where MCP gets a forecast. Let's dive in, introduce ourselves, and talk about the latest hot takes, cold fronts, and stormy debates in MCP. Today, I'm your host, Devin, Devilif on Longshanks. I've got with me Dustin, the reliable realtor, and Ian, science brother Keel.
Yo.
Say hi, guys.
Howdy. Hey, how's it going?
Glad to have you both here with me today. Our schedule, we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about a little bit later. We're going to talk about the crisis, the threats that people, the community don't like, do like, why they don't like them, what's going on there. Things like, why do people malign 15 threat? Why does everybody like more characters on the table? I feel like that one's obvious, but we're going to get into it a little bit more in depth. And then later on, we're going to play the game, the character game. You know it, you love it. If you don't, that's too bad. You got to listen to it. And then after that, we're going to talk about the releases coming up in 2025. We got a little bit of a snippet of the look ahead, and we want to talk about what we think that's gonna, what kind of impacts that's gonna have, and what that means for MCP. Before we go diving in here, do either of you, Dustin or Corey, have anything you'd like to plug?
Ooh, Corey.
Oh yeah, yep, just cutting Ian out. Man, I just spaced him entirely. Sorry, Ian. Do you, Dustin or Ian, have anything you'd like to plug?
Well, it's a new year, and just lots of people reaching out about finding houses. So if you know anybody that's looking to buy or sell, you can reach me on Discord. I think I'm the Realty Stone there, but you could also send me a text or call at 253-888-0241. I love working with nerds because they get my jokes.
Somebody has to, right?
Yeah, my wife definitely doesn't.
That's for sure. Connor in the Twitch chat said he's pumped for the new Spider. I assume he means the new Spider box, because that's coming out later this year. And the Spider foes too. Maybe that's what he meant. But either way, I'm also excited for both webs and Spider foes to get something this year. Ian, and I know you have a Instagram. Instagram.
Yeah, I got an Instagram if anyone
All
wants
right.
to check it out. It's just Brush Brother. But I also know Dustin's part of this too. I think Corey's running a painting competition, right?
Oh yeah. Let's talk about that.
Honestly, I did not pay that much attention to the details, so Corey's going to tell me. But
I have some details. Let me see. I'll find it on my calendar. It is Thursday, February 13th. I don't think Corey has an exact time yet, but I'm planning on being to Paradox at 5 p.m. And I believe it's mini agnostic, and Ian, Corey, and I are going to be judging the painting competition. He did put out a rubric. I don't know if he put it out to the public or just to some of the local chats, but we're trying to be as objective as possible, because the three of us at least know, painting techniques and are fairly good judges of skill. So it's not just some random person from a store that, doesn't know anything and picks up some cherry blossoms.
Ian's favorite painting consumable. Absolutely. That's awesome.
I
Okay.
just learned to give up and go with it. But I think part of that's too, at least if there's local people that are going to be participating, I think there's part where Corey wanted to have someone drop by just to show proof of the unpainted model right beforehand, so that you can't just load in something that you've had painted for the past year that you really like. So something new.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then so I assume that the painting competition sounds like it's going to be local, so maybe not all of our listeners will have a chance. But if you do, Paradox Trading Post, You said, what was the date? Thursday,
Thursday, February 13th.
February 13th, having the painting competition. And then I would hope that you guys would take some pictures. I could put them on. I could put a link to all of the pictures on our podcast for later.
Yeah. Yeah, I might paint something up, and obviously I can't compete, but
Right.
just
Yeah, because you're the judge.
get something. Yeah, just get something in there, because I'm gonna try and paint more minis this year. I did not do very many last year,
I'm gonna paint exactly the same amount as I did the year before, and I'm here
and
for
yet you have more painted miniatures than just about anybody I know.
it. Yeah, it's commissioning. Yep, all of it. All right, that's awesome. I'll put that on the podcast on YouTube, Crosshair Gaming, if you're listening to us on Twitch, and then that's at Paradox Trading Post, Lacey, Washington. All right. I don't have anything else to plug here, unless either of you two do. Let's dive into some crisis talk. Nothing. Alrighty. All right. So I want to jump right out the gate here. I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about threat. I want to talk about specifically crisis, and both and addressing both of those. Why the community views 15 is good, bad, what you perceive as you're playing your matches out there, and then lastly, I want to talk about your personal opinions of, is that community perception good? Would it be good if 15 went away? Would it be good if we got a 21? These are some questions that I'd like to answer here. So I want to start off out the gate. Just pose it to either of you. It doesn't matter. And maybe you don't have to agree with the point that I'm asking you to make, but why is 15 bad? Why is 15 threat bad?
Ian, you go first.
As I say, Dustin, I think might actually have a differing opinion from us. So
Absolutely, that's fair.
But yeah, so general opinion is it skews a lot, and it makes any overpowered kaiju. It shines a spotlight on it, basically. So if you have less stuff on the board, your individual pieces are more impactful. And if you just have, if there's a couple combos in the game, but it's very easy to make very efficient packages, then those, at least perception wise, I think reality, but at least perception wise, just go to show what's broken or busted. Also, I think just in general gaming terms, if you've got less tools, that means if anything goes wrong, you have less recourse to try to course correct the way the game's going. And sometimes MCP guys can just dump on you. If you got less pieces, you've got less chances for it to correct. Yeah, those two kind of go hand in hand. Most of the time it's attrition pieces, right, at low threat, that just try to
Absolutely
outkill your other pieces. So I think that's the broad overview, general.
Yeah, so
about 15 threat.
The pieces that I'm picking up from you, maybe not your, or maybe it is your perception, maybe it isn't, is that the cons to 15 are that if there is a broken combo in the meta or just out there in general, it can be maximized or exemplified upon with like a specific kaiju in 15, and that it makes up at least half or more than half sometimes of your list. And right. An opponent can't necessarily, unless they're taking the exact same thing, copy the tactic that you're using. And then the other point that I felt like you made there is that in 15 threat, you have less pieces to allow for the averages of MCP dice to happen or, average out. You have a bad turn with 15 threat, that might just be the game for you on the spot, where the averages of dice can't come back and save you.
Yep.
Dustin.
Okay,
go ahead.
I think just for me personally, like what is a little bit more annoying too, at least with threat and let's say what are the quote unquote meta builds, is I think the more tools on the board, the more interesting and nuance you get, as opposed to, I'm pretty sure any of the big 15 threat rosters that have ever come around, we can all just list, and I don't want to like shame net listers, but
Sure.
it's always annoying when you know that you lost to someone who maybe doesn't know anything about the game, but because they heard of a net list that had Malekith cat dog or whatever,
Right.
they won, and despite your best skill, that's a hell of a mountain to climb. So for health of the game, I think it's way easier to net list and make stuff look bland or boring at low threat as opposed to if it's higher. But
I,
that's
c-
just me.
I could see that. Um, Dustin, anything to add on Ian's perception here on 15? Why is 15 a bad threat? What do you got for me?
I know you said give opinions at the end, but I can see why uh, those points are being made. However, unlike Zemo last time, where I didn't have a strong opinion on it,
Okay.
this time I do.
Okay.
I think 15 threat is good for the game,
Oh, okay.
uh, and here's why.
All
It's
right.
it's basically the counterpoint to everything Ian said. Uh, so so my thoughts are not everything needs to be nuanced. We don't need 10 models, or not 10, but like we don't need like 6 wide teams every game. And there is a very large group of players in this game who do like bringing kaiju, and that is where the kaiju shine. So I agree with him on that like this is where you're going to see Thanos and CGR and Malekith. And yeah, you probably will see a more repetitive uh, grouping because there are less kaiju in the game than there are just regular models. There's only a handful of 6 threats and above in general.
Sure.
Uh, and so the I love playing with dice. I love attrition. I love attrition, even though it's not the most optimal way to play. There is something to be said about buckets of dice. And playing those big models is really rewarding. That's why it's out there. And so
I
when
don't.
it comes, go ahead.
I don't disagree. I think this is absolutely the place where your Malekith or your Thanos get like the most like the shining stardom that sometimes they deserve.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point. I think on the inside, it's also a good point that they are the strongest there. But maybe, them being the strongest there is the intention, and maybe, like you said, this is the place they should shine. But
I
Well,
I
and
will also
let
say,
Dustin talk. There's one more thing I kind of want to say, but
okay,
let Dustin finish.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question that I wanted to add once you finish there is that I'd also like you to touch on is talk about allowing dice to average out. In a 15 game, there is no chance if you have a spike on one turn for those to average out. What do you think about that part of it? The Ian's
I
other
think
point
that's
here.
Yeah, I think that is part of the game. MCP dice are not balanced by intention, they're weighted towards attack.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted a dice game that was more balanced, you would move to a D6 system because it's easy to say, okay, three and below, and 4 and up, and now you have a perfectly balanced die. You are going to spike in a 15, and there's less room for you to come back because each of your models are so important. But I think that is part of the game. And as much as it sucks to say it was a dice game, I do think that, sometimes it's okay to just win by dice. And if you bring your kaiju and your opponent doesn't have an answer for them, and a spike wins, isn't that a little bit on your opponent because there's a chance you're gonna play a 15. There's a chance you're gonna face a kaiju.
Sure.
If you don't bring the tools to at least give yourself a fighting chance, even if there is a spike, then you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And that's kind of a cost of list making. You have to factor in those characters and tactics cards that are going to give you an ability to bounce back.
I can see that point. Ian, you had something else to add?
Well, the bigger picture, I think So my earlier point of like what I don't like about it, just making stuff homogeneous, is kind of more annoying. I think I've come around a lot more to Dustin's point about like if it comes down to dice being dice, if you're going into a game being like I want to win off skill, there is skill issue because it is a gamble. Because
Right.
who's to say that your Thanos might control something, but none of his attacks connect, or maybe your 4 dice attack spikes into 6 damage somehow. Like
Right.
Right.
so I have kind of given up on that of like it goes both ways. Now the repercussions, yeah, it can go both ways. I think it still leans in favor of the kaiju, but I think Dustin's point of like this is their time to shine, it is correct. What makes it also a little bit more weird is the I think the type of play style as well, where our 15 threats are right now, it's researcher, gamma, and sword base, right? Which are fairly close attrition-y. I'm thinking of the shape in general mixed with those threats is sometimes forcing that scenario, which makes it annoying. I'm really fascinated, and the example I'm thinking of is like was it Cosmic Invasion, right? The 16 threat D shape.
Right.
1 threat more, but that's very much like a scenario based. And it's interesting if you think like, well, can kaiju shine there, and how do you balance it with the amount of points on the table? Because that one is a little faster scoring, so maybe you don't see the kaiju, but is a model like Malekith that has a medium base and a charge. If he could charge on turn 1, right? Maybe that's an more interesting discussion rather than it's gamma. Here we go, my guy versus your guy.
Yeah.
Let's roll. Let's see what happens.
I would absolutely agree. I'd even posit that a 15 threat gamma is absolutely a different game than a 15 threat sword base.
Yeah.
The scenario heavily influences what 15 threat looks like. And I think the point that I wanted to bring here is not necessarily like we haven't gotten into Crisis yet and why Crisis are good, bad, maligned, whatnot, but just 15 threat in general. We've had both some good points and some bad points, or not some bad points for it being good and bad. Yeah, sorry. Points for it being both good and bad, and I think you both make good points here. Like, is
Can
it
I add
the
one more thing to
you can, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll let you
not to either side, but just to the conversation.
absolutely go ahead. That's what we're here
Because
for.
I've heard some people say like, I don't want 15 threat in the game.
Yeah, I've heard that a
period.
lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and a while ago there was a 14 threat,
yeah,
and that was the problem threat. When you got 14, it was like, okay, now we know we're playing the super tall kaiju list, and then it went away, and now it's 15. What happens if 15 is removed? Are the crisis at 16 varied enough? To go back to what was just being said. Are they varied enough? And if not, what happens to 16?
absolutely. It's definitely a progressive thing. If we continue to cut out the bottom one there, I think the 16s are definitely a lot different than what we have at 15. Like we have what is it? Mayor Fisk and Cosmic Invasion are the two 16s that come to mind. I don't know if there's another one at the moment.
Isn't Paranoia also 16?
Oh yes, Paranoia is also yeah. So we're looking at Cosmic Invasion, Paranoia, two very scenario heavy crises, and then Mayor Fisk, it can go one way or another depending on what you bring to that table and where you shift those fists to after turn 1. But yeah, I mean we're coming back into Crisis here. I think 15 threat. I think you both made great points. I think that just in conclusion, right? 15 threat being good and bad. Yes, it does allow for kaiju to be the biggest piece on the table, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's where the intention is. So I could see that going either way. I think that yes, like if you're going up against a kaiju and you haven't prepared for it, like Dustin said, if you brought a list that you're not ready to face a Thanos or a Malekith or Thor 2 on a 15 threat gamma, then that's on your list. I think that you may have overshot or just misread that your meta had those kaiju on a 15 threat, and you're going to get punished for it because they're really good on those threats. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that that's part of the game that you have to be prepared for. It's much lined up into the rock paper scissors that we want to see at top meta armies and lists and teams and such. But I would say that that point is more on 15 threat being a good. I would
Yeah.
say that on the other side, 15 threat could be bad in that I think Ian made a good point with the dice can absolutely cripple one turn. Maybe you played it to the utmost, the best decisions, the highest averages. You gave yourself the best. You even, let's say you took the same list as your opponent and
Right.
played the same army, sorry, the same squad as your opponent, but just dice spiked on you one turn. And at 15 threat, if they have prio right afterwards, the game's over. Like you lost your single kaiju and it's over. And that feels bad, but it can totally happen with MCP, and it's something that we have to think about when we're playing this game. Like you didn't come to MCP to like you made a good point. You didn't come to MCP just to bank out averages and play Monopoly, right? You came to risk things.
Well, I think that to
But I
speak
think
to the other side.
I think that's part of why 15 is bad in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that that's a totally valid point. There absolutely should be strategy focused crisis where playing attrition is the wrong move. Now,
And there
whether or
definitely
not
are.
that's whether or not that should be high threat or should be low threat or somewhere in the middle is another discussion.
Right.
If you were design crisis so that attrition is all high threat and strategy is all low threat or vice versa, that's
Right.
completely changing the crisis, and we might see that with the crisis mix up.
Right.
But I
Absolutely.
think right now there's a fair mix of both at high and low threat. Low threat definitely skewing towards attrition though.
Absolutely.
I
I think I just wanted to say, like, I think that we have talked a lot about the pros and cons of 15, and I think that we have a good grasp on each other's view of this, as well as a lot of the people that we've talked to in the Stormbreaker community, and I think that we brought that to the table here, which I'm glad that we had differing opinions. That was neat to see. But I do want to
Ian and
move.
I often have differing
Oh
opinions.
well, yeah,
I
yes,
do
of
have
course.
one more comment though, if you don't
All
mind.
right, Ian. Slip it in there. But this is the
So
last thing.
yeah, well, so what came to mind was, and I think game health wise, maybe what sucks is when it feels solved. And right now it feels
Yeah.
solved if you have low threat plus those low threat basically being attrition lists. And so we talked about like, yeah, you got 16 threat cosmic and paranoid's different. What jumped to my mind is, past couple months we've been playing those weird, cards that adjust threat, right?
Right.
One shots.
I don't know if that does anything where, like, if you had some weird almost randomization of threat, just plus or minus one, how much does that change people's perception of low threat when
Mm.
it's like, well, maybe it's not the low threat that's busted for the reasons that Dustin described. It just feels boring if you know what you're going to play against, but
I
it's more
yeah.
interesting and more skill related. Well, like I've got my kaiju, but now do I have a good 3 threat or a 4 threat that I can put in here to
Right.
augment it, right?
I like that.
Um,
That's
that
a good addition. I think talking about those one shots and the modifications they could have on threat, totally a good topic to talk about. And I think that um
We'll
really
do a
real
podcast on that
yeah,
one
yeah.
day.
I
Those
think
are
we should
super
definitely
fun.
talk about one shots sometime down the line. But yeah, sometimes it's just about perception of the threat. Like people bring to the table, they hit 15 and they think, all right, well, it's time to play my kaiju. I don't care that it's sword base, right? Sometimes it's all about the perception of the player you're up against, um, and and that brings a lot into it. Is your 15 threat 3 tall list gonna outscore my 5 wide 15 on sword base? We do have Klaatu in the Twitch chat saying the solve is not threat removal. Just make crisis randomized. And I mean, I feel like I feel like with that comment, crisis are randomized. I mean, your opponent's going to bring the ones that are best to them, but they're not guaranteed an E threat 15, even if they get priority. Um,
Yeah, I feel like there's not many affiliations where you can say, all three secures and all three extracts are all super good for my affiliation. Like usually you have two where you're like, okay, if I get these, I'm
Right.
really happy. And then, the opponent flips over the card and you're like, man, that one, even though it's
Yeah,
your card, you're like, okay.
absolutely. I would agree.
I don't think that total randomization is the answer.
I mean, I definitely see the point of, hey, there's Demon's Gamma, and then like you're still not guaranteed to hit that 15. If you had Demon's Gamma at sword base, you're leveraging your chances of hitting an E shape and hitting a low threat, but it's still like a 19 is not a 15, and the opponent could absolutely have something.
Yeah.
So Klaatu clarified, saying completely randomized would force teams outside their comfort zone more often than hitting them. And I think
But it also takes away a tool for the players to customize their roster.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree. I think that bringing the 6 crises that work best with your team is absolutely part of the game. Like list building, those 3 to 6 crises that make your team, like you have the best chances on those crises, is a part of list building that you see it at the top levels of competitiveness. Klaatu added that New Asgard right now is great at 15. I don't disagree. New Asgard is absolutely great at 15, but they don't always hit it, and they don't always have priority, and that's definitely what you have to play into with Asgard. If you hit Asgard on a 15 E-shaped gamma, do you have a plan for it? If you don't, you're going to suffer. And that's just part of list building, I think.
Yeah.
Connor also added in Twitch chat, he said, is there a single affiliation that shines best at 15 threat games? And that was Klaatu's answer, that Asgard is the great 15 right now. I would say that I would also posit that Thanos with Space Mind, Zemo, and Red Skull 3 is the other solved quote unquote 15. And that,
Yeah.
those two are out there. But we've spent a bit of time on this. Let's move on from is threat 15 bad? I think it is. I think we made some good points, both pro and con, for 15. And I do want to talk about some other ones here. And the opposite of this is, let's talk about not 15 threat, not 16. Let's go all the way to the top, 20 threat. Now, I don't want to talk about like 20 threat. No one really talks about 20 threat, but tell me, I want to get an opinion from both of you. Why is 20 threat good? Why is it bad? What kind of opinion do you have here? And since we started with Ian first last time, let's get Dustin in here first. What's your opinion on a 20 threat?
I cannot recall one time where I flipped Crisis and was like, all right, we're going 20, where the opponent was upset. Like pretty much every time
Right?
you
Right?
bring 20, the other person is
Now,
like,
why
yeah,
is that? Why is
because
that?
you want as many models on the table as possible. And 20, regardless of if you're doing attrition or scenario, 20 means I get to bring the most stuff possible.
Now, is that just cool factor, or are you going back to our point we made about a 15, where the more models there are, the better average of dice and more application of skill there is?
I think that's something that Ian could certainly talk about. That's not really
Now, what's
how.
your feeling? I'm
Yeah,
asking you specifically.
yeah.
Why
That's not
why would
really
you say
how
that is?
Yeah, that's not really how I assess Crisis so much because um, I do play more casually. I like the rule of cool,
Sure.
playing the characters that you like, and I'm totally somebody who will throw a model in a roster to kind of see how it muddies the water. And 20 is where like, okay, I can throw that model in that maybe doesn't fit super well, but because I have 4, maybe 5 other characters that I know are gonna work, it's not gonna completely ruin my game plan.
I like that.
Whereas like if I wanted to try out a model at a low threat, even if it's not 15, it's like, okay, I have 4 models. If one of them is just a, hey, let's see how it works, 3 models
Absolutely.
really got to do the
Absolutely.
heavy lifting.
Klaatu from Twitch added, you get more you get to do more of what you built your team to do. And I think that's the point you're trying to make there. I think that's
Yeah.
absolutely on spot on. Anything else to add about 20 threat before I send it over to Ian?
I wish that they would make more of them.
Okay.
And I
What
don't
about
necessarily feel that it needs to be capped at 20.
when we're
Um,
talking about 20 threat, you brought up, putting models on the table. Would you like a 21 or a 22?
Absolutely. I think that there's room in this game for higher threats than 20. Just because it will affect the length of the game.
Yeah,
Obviously, the
a little
more
bit.
turns
Yeah.
you take. So that's something to consider. If you want to keep it a skirmish game, maybe there's a cap to how much you could really do. But I I think that it's not really going to cause a problem because the opponent also gets to bring it. Just like how with 15, I said where, hey, if you don't plan for this scenario, you're being punished. The opposite can almost be said where at 20, you almost don't have to plan for it so much, where it's like, yeah, I have a 20. Like everybody's got a 20 because it's the highest threat that we can
Right.
go. So bringing more threat to the game, it definitely varies it, and I would say, AMG, if they were to do it, would need to test it. But when I heard that somebody played a one shot and got up to 21,
That was
I
me.
was like,
I got
yeah,
23.
I
I got 23
you
with a
got
one
to
shot.
23. I
Yeah.
was like, what? I want to play that.
It's so
Like
much fun.
if somebody told me, hey, I played a one shot and I got to 10, I was like, I don't know if I want to play that.
Iclitu added that one shots get you there already, and yeah, I agree. But is it something that we want to see in like a competitive MCP? And that's kind of what we're addressing right now. We've recently played a lot of one shots in a couple of our goofy like um, holiday tournaments, but you don't typically see one shots out in the wild, and I kind of wish that we did to some extent. I think they're
Yeah,
really cool, and
they're
I think
fun.
the things that they do to threat are really cool. Obviously, people don't like seeing the minus threat, but they love seeing the 20 plus, like the 21, 22, 23 threat. So much fun, and the car, and just like all the variations of cool little things that one shots add to. All right, well let's ship it over to Ian. I've got some good points here from Dustin, and let's kind of throw back to our 15 here. When you have 20 threat, you can average out your dice. You can have a more expected game. You can see all of the models. Like you can see more of what your team wants to do, and you can throw in even a splash model, and it won't hinder you so much because it's only 3, 4, 5 threat out of the other 4 or 5 characters that you have, so you don't feel as bad if that model just absolutely crashes and burns. Anything to add, Ian? We'll send it over to you.
I'm trying to just think of the other points though for like, you know, there really is not much I'd say like solved for 20, but I think it is a general idea that if you're a scenario team, right, not a control, you do get more advantage the higher threat just because the more models, not necessarily even about like dice evening out. It's just like you got more tools to win the game.
Right.
And if you're built for that, then that's a huge help. Um
If
I
we,
don't know if that breaks it because so like 20 threat right now, the webs, right?
yeah,
I think we can think of like how they can go 8 wide. I feel like you give them one more threat. There's a way to bring in grunts and whatever. And now you're 9 wide,
right.
and you start bullying in all sorts of. I kind of talk about stacking effects, right?
Yep.
And I
Yep.
feel like there's got to be a point where for attrition or a scenario that does get a little out of hand, I think that still kind of might show your skill because there's just absolute chaos going on at that point. But
So that's a throwback in a
I
different
don't know if
way
that's good or
to the way
bad.
we talked about 15. Is there a limit that we're going to hit on the flip side where it's just there's too many models on the table for an attrition team to deal with, and 20 threat would be quote unquote solved because you're putting like 8 models or 7 models or on the table, and attrition just can't deal with it.
And I
Is
think it all
that
depends on how many points are on the table too, right? So it's not necessarily a threat thing. Like you can imagine if
right?
it's
The current crisis
if
for
you got
20
25
are
threat, but there's
scoundrels
max.
and scrolls.
Yeah, right.
And both of those are putting 4 to 5 points on the table. What what would it be like if we had a crisis that had put only like 3 points with 20 threat on the table? Like, Is that okay? Would that be fun?
I think that'd be fantastic. I mean, that's kind of why I've always kind of enjoyed. Well, I've enjoyed Scoundrels because even though it is a high scoring point, it is a pretty big brawl. You know, you bring your characters with charge, you bring your fighters, not necessarily just your people that can run away, right? Um, so not necessarily the best point because that is a fast scoring one,
Right.
but
It's a 5.
Well, like
the bloodbath.
Demons is 19 in an E shape, so that's probably a better
Yeah, it's not
fit for what you're talking about.
Closer. Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
would love to see more high threat, low points out there in the crisis. Like, ship us a 21 threat with only like 3 or 4 points able to score a turn, and really let us brawl with as many models as we can put on the table.
Or
And
even like a secure that gives you extra points if you do KO
This-
or days enemy characters nearby.
yeah,
or
that'd be a
something like
neat addition. But I think
This is
I
a
think the general
different-
consensus before we get off track here, I think the general consensus on from both of you is, hey, 20 threat is good. I haven't heard anything from either of you that said, 20 threat is bad. I don't
Yeah.
I don't really see any point. I mean, we had some callbacks to 15, and that you could try and abuse putting as many models as possible on the table. But the average, like to try and abuse the advantage of, hey, I can put a bunch of 2 threats and 3 threats on the board and try and outscore you. But if in a callback to what Dustin said about 15, if you don't have a plan for that with your team, if you come up against webs, you've already lost. Like that is absolutely something you need to come into list building with in the back of your mind. You need to be prepared for that webs matchup or that hellfire matchup where it's just a bunch of 2s and 3s and they're stealing extracts and running away.
100%. I agree with all that. I think that, just even though I love to roll dice, you have to prepare for scenario. And, I think that if you're not preparing for both ends of the spectrum, a team that's skewed pretty heavily either way is going to run the table with you eventually.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think that we pretty well covered 23. I think we all like 23. I even think we'd like to see more threat sometimes because it's just fun to put those models on the table. And we don't see 20 threat ever being solved in the way that we look at 15 threat. But yeah, I think that's a good coverage. I don't have, do either of you have anything specific to say about the in-betweens, the 16, 17, 18, 19? I don't. Really, I'm looking at the 15 and 20 here for the biggest opinion from the community. I didn't really pick up anything personally about the others. The ones in between have kind of slid under the radar for me. I'd like to move on to talk about Crisis specifically, unless you guys have anything else to add about 16, 17, or 18, or 19.
No, but one thing I do want to say about the conversation we had about like if they were to increase threat,
Sure.
I've always thought that maybe there's room for another format of MCP where it's a higher threat game, like a significally higher threat game.
If we apply that to Warhammer, are you talking like a kill team versus a Warhammer 40K-esque thing? Where you're putting like 20 or 30 MCP models on the table and you're emulating like maybe an end game sort of format?
Maybe not that much.
Okay.
But something in the middle where it's like a 30 threat game. So
Sure.
you're bringing a full roster, like 10 characters.
I mean, that sounds like an ultimate encounter to me. And just kind of like fun. It seems like an Apocalypse throwback. Not Apocalypse in Marvel, but Apocalypse in 40K, Warhammer 40,000, which is just basically you put a whole bunch of models on the table and you fight each other, which is a fun thing to do in like a garage game over the course of several hours, but it's never going to be something competitive, right? That's not a...
Well, yeah, I think I've had this thought for a while.
You just want to have fun.
It fits, but like it would be cool to have an alternate format where,
Sure.
30 threat is the average.
I'll tell you what,
maybe
Dustin.
the games take a while, but...
I'll tell you what, that format would be absolutely more popular than the timelines format that MCP's been pushing for the last
Yeah,
year,
for sure.
because that shit is garbage and nobody plays it.
Nobody plays it.
If you
Um,
play it, please message us
yeah,
because I
yeah.
want to know who you play with. How do you find people?
Yeah, I mean,
I like that idea, though, Dustin. I think that's cool.
I think it is a fun idea. I think it'd be cool to get together and develop maybe a crisis or something, a mission of the sort to try and play like 30 threat versus each other or something.
Well, it
Uh,
reminds me of separation anxiety too, where there's
yeah,
four
there's
players,
four
but you still have a
players.
total of like 40 threat on the table.
Absolutely.
So.
That would be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun. All right, I do want to shoot. Moving on, I want to talk about Crisis. And when I talk about Malign Crisis, the one that comes to mind for me, and I think probably for you guys, is Research Station. And Ian had a very strong opinion about this very recently. And so I want to throw it to him first. Why is Research Station bad or good, Ian?
I mean, you can listen to any of the podcasters that talk. I don't have anything super nuanced. I'm trying to think if I had a conversation recently that I said something particularly good, but
No, you're good.
um,
I,
it's
why is it bad?
uh, it warps the game in too many ways at once. I feel like where I don't know. I'm keep on this thing about like stacked effects and how they can do not great things because it does a couple things right. So it changes how extracts are played, right? So any of the weird tools or whatever you have for that, it changes or they're completely irrelevant. Turns it into a secure. So not even is it like we're not playing with extracts, we're doubling down on secures, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's a double secure if
but
you pull that and something else, right?
but it's also an attrition secure. It's almost like what's the difference between researcher and well, it's not quite the same because Fisk is still a secure, but um, it's one centralized, all or nothing point. Um, so it does too many things at once that just warp the game. I feel like that uh, make it solved. And solved in the same way that we kind of, for a lot of the same reasons why we just talked about 15. It's in my mind just one more reason of just like that makes things worse that way. I don't know if there's any much more nuance that I
That's
need to
fine.
put
That's
into
fine.
that.
So Klatsu from the Twitch chat added back on our talk about Apocalypse. He mentioned an alternative format where it was a team event, but all 6 players are on a 9x3 board, and there's no overlap between models and TTCs, just triple threat level. So
That's a lot.
a 3v3 with just triple threat level and no overlap between models and TCCs. So it'd be kind of cool. But then
Finding a 9x3 board is gonna be tough.
you just push some tables together. But also, he mentioned afterwards that he's talking the same point that you just made, Ian. It's an extract that you don't pick up. So there's no picking it up and running with it. There's no chase involved. There's just stand there and punch the other opponent. And I completely agree. I mean, that is absolutely the epitome of an attrition extract. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah.
Why is Research Station bad? Why is it good?
Well, I really hate to admit this, but I agree with Ian on a lot
Oh
of
my
these
God.
Yeah.
So a lot of the crisis were changed when they updated to not be one objective. They had before the crisis changed, there were a lot of one objectives, and it just became whoever's holding the objective wins. I think that problem is still there with researcher. It behaves like a secure, even though it's an extract, and so it can lead to a feel bad where a team that is better on secures, maybe somebody like a Brotherhood compared to a Web Warriors.
Yeah.
Brotherhood is always going to have the edge on researcher because they're better at standing on a point.
One
And so
one of the things that we talked about over the talk with the thread levels is that we wanted to make sure when you're building a list that you're planning for that 15 or you're planning for that 20. And if you're an affiliation that plays scenario heavily and you're planning for a 15, maybe your 15 is like 4 threat where you manipulate control of the opponent because you don't have a better way to go up against, say, a Thanos, Zemo, Red Skull. And in this
Yeah.
case, you can't do that. What are you going to do? Displace a model and then they just absolutely murder you because it's sitting right there next to them? You don't have those options with Researcher.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to you can't Spider or Web Warriors can win against Brotherhood. It's not impossible if you're on that matchup, but it's much harder. They have a lot of displacement. Brotherhood particularly resists displacement with a lot of models.
Yeah.
But I think that the other point is just a balance of, if you're gonna go super low threat, do you also go super attrition shape? If you're gonna go super high threat, do you always go super wide shape? Because is there so much going on with a researcher that that's not really the problem? Or can you have a 15 threat E shape and it be fine as long as it's an actual extract where there are multiple extracts?
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely agree with that for sure. I think that part of why this one is so maligned and comes up so often, and even part of why the community helped get it restricted, is that if you're planning for it as a scenario affiliation, you have to sacrifice a good portion of your list to either dual affiliate it or play models that are suboptimal for your game plan on any other shape. You have to stand there.
Yeah. It's just too much in one direction. I personally,
Not to
as much
mention
as
it's
I'm
a
usually the guy that likes to be like, oh, there should be exceptions and there should be places for
sure.
these things,
Yeah.
I think that the biggest issue is it's an extract that behaves like a secure.
Right. If this was a secure, I don't think anybody would have as much problem with it as they do.
No.
Because then, so as a webs player or any other scenario affiliation, if I'm picking my secures, there's a 33% chance going up to a team that has research station that I'm just boned. Like, cool, I got my scoundrels, but also if they just sit on the middle scoundrel where the research station is and don't move it, they're scoring 3 points on one secure. Right?
Yeah.
Because the research station and that's secure, and that is rough. How do you deal with that running around on the other four secures while also trying to do some attrition? That's pretty rough.
I also think it's a bit weird where like it has taken forever for Researcher to get banned. I don't think it was ever a great design, but we talked a little bit about power creep last time. Just how killy some of the stuff. Like when CGR first came out on Research Station,
Yeah.
like my God, like like what do you do? Even if you are a team built for it and you want Research Station, but you just happen to be paired up against the flavor of the month Kaiju that hasn't been nerfed yet, that you didn't bring, good luck. And then we get situations kind of like last LVO, kind of.
Right,
But
where there's just a
um,
duel across the table. Same thing.
yeah.
All right, so I feel like we addressed research station here. A couple good points we made is research station is bad because it can't be picked up. It acts like a secure. You pretty much have to stand still and hit each other in that midpoint. It warps the mission. Even if there is like a cosmic or a D shape, you can ignore two of the D shapes and just sit in the middle, and it's equating the same amount of points. And then also, you can't really plan for this. As a scenario affiliation, you have to sacrifice a good portion of your list to try and plan around this, or dual affiliate, which really makes you suffer against the scenario versus the mirror match or whatever. And that's rough. That's really rough. If one mission alone is doing that. So there was another crisis that I'd like to talk about before we finish up here. And it's not any crisis specifically. It is a type of crisis, and we know them, we hate them. It's pay to flips. And since I kicked this off with Ian first last time, if that's the correct way to say that, I'm pretty sure I fucked that up. Dustin, why don't you tell us why pay to flips are good, why pay to flips are bad, as in your perception.
Um, I'm kind of in the middle on this. I think that there is one thing that I would say pay to flip should have as a baseline rule, and that's if it's uncontested, you should get it. Um, there have been a lot of games, both with my opponents and myself, where we're running around, and I think it might be Sword, one of them.
Sword base is the
If
one that does
you,
it like you're talking about.
yeah, so like if you stand on it and nobody else is there, and you roll and you don't get the success, well, now you just don't
Right.
get that
You've
point, and
wasted
it's
your
like,
whole turn moving
yeah,
to that secure to not do anything at all.
yeah, and it's like if it's uncontested, you should just get it. I
I
think that
agree.
would solve a lot of the feel bad. Other than that, though, I am okay having prices that have more variance. I think a pay to flip is fine if it's contested. I can't remember the name, but there are a couple that you have to roll more successes than the opponent standing there, and I don't have a problem with that. I wish that there was more variance in general than stand on it or pay to flip. I
Right.
like the crisis that give out conditions or move you, things
Yeah.
like that. Um, like my favorite crisis, even if I don't play it a ton, is probably intrusions, because the
Yeah.
points
The
are
risk.
just so, yeah, it's risky, but it's also just like it's a unique thing. That game is different than any other game you play, even at that threat, because, well, now Magneto's across the board. And how good is Magneto when he can always be in somebody's face,
Yeah. I will say
Um,
that is absolutely one of the good points that I'd like to add about pay to flips. Pay to flips are good because each of them has an effect. Whether it's sword base, if you control more, you push somebody, or with um, uh, right portals, you place yourself within two if you roll a skull. The traps of the mutant madmen, like there is a neat aspect that they add to the game that you have to consider when you go flip it, which I think we should see more often. Just standing next to Crisis, kind of like how Cosmic makes you potentially get pushed at the power phase. But I do also align myself with, if it's uncontested, just let me flip the point. Don't let me roll 4 energy defense and if blank out and not get the point, even though I double move to get here. That is a feels bad, and just about every time I play them.
yeah, it's just a really easy fix, and like it just makes everything go so much smoother. I've lost a game where I was behind on 1 point. I had Panther as my last activation, and I moved to a sword, try and flip it, didn't get it.
Right.
Moved to another one, try and flip it, didn't get it. And so like that,
Absolutely.
I should have won that game. I had all the strategy that I needed. I was planning it out, and I was like, okay, what are the odds I double fail? And
Yeah.
it just
Exactly.
happened.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Ian, we haven't heard from you much. Anything to add to these comments on pay to flips?
I think part of the other reason they're maligned is that they're all over the map when it comes to consequences for flipping or not flipping. So just losing out on points, and also it being kind of a all or nothing, similar to researcher, doesn't feel great, as opposed to, yeah, I've got, you've got one healthy model there, I've got one healthy model, there's nothing, right? So pretty high stakes, randomize it, then all of a sudden you're just like, well, what the hell? But then some of the effects are really backbreaking, like off portals,
Absolutely.
compared to others like Mutant Madman. I feel like if most people are like, yeah, Mutant Madman's actually kind of cool. It feels like it's worthwhile babysitting your point and sitting on it and protecting it, because maybe you'll do a damage if someone else comes in. If you come in, you need a plan for making sure you can get it. That's kind of cool. And you take a damage, you get a power. It's not the end of the world, but it could be very important, and that's neat. But yeah, that portal just sucks. And
Yeah. Yeah.
sword base, if you're on 15 and you do bring a kaiju, getting moved outer space also
Right.
sucks.
Yeah.
Um, But I absolutely agree with Dustin's points and yours about the uncontested versus whatever. So I think there's a lot of tuning that needs to happen for him.
Yeah. I mean, if they just let you flip that point, if no one's contesting it, that increases people's enjoyment of these and use of these tenfold. I feel like, because how often do you see sword base without it being like an X-Men or anyone that cares about pay to flips? Like sword base
Well,
is
and
still used even though it is a pay to flip technically.
well, and I think they're an interesting. There used to be a point when webs, at various times that webs have been something worried about. People have been like, "Well, bring pay to flips." The reason being because of the power tax.
Right.
And I do think there's an interesting thing there when you do have, say, power generating leaderships or affiliations that do it well. That does give a kind of interesting benefit that way. So you can almost have two different flavors of scenario secure
Right.
play, right? Now for X-Men, first class is great, but it's a one-turn thing,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just not actually as good as you think it is after first turn. Cyclops leadership kind of helps there, so there's some weird synergies there, but I like that it makes a different flavor for secures for scenario play, and that it also does it for attrition as well too, right? I think the idea that they're out there makes the game really cool, but the effects are all over the place, and the way you get it just being so random sucks. So that's
And
why I hate it.
Ian, do you think that your general, they're not tuned enough is because you're not, smart enough? You're not running Heimdall and Black Panther 3 every game.
Yeah, probably.
Oh man, shots fired.
Man.
That is funny.
Well, hey, my shield team's got Namor in it, so now all of my problems are solved.
Yeah,
So
that's what that is. That's it, right? All right. I feel like we also made some good points here on point of pay to flips. We made a point that pay to flips are bad because right there are three of them of the four out there that if no one's standing next to it, doesn't matter. You still roll dice. You have a chance to fail. Not only do you have a chance to fail, you have a chance to get punished by a placement or damage or just not getting the point entirely. Which, if you're rotating on a D shape or a B shape, you spent your whole turn getting there and you've spent a power, and you're getting punished, and you don't get the point. Those are too many compounding factors for a rotation that you absolutely need to commit to get parity on the game or bring it back to your sides. So flipping the point can be very high stakes. That's the other point, the point that we made for pay to flips being bad. Some good points that we made for pay to flips being good. The reasons that we think that they do deserve a place in the game. Dustin made a good point about how they care about other characters contesting the point. Yeah, you could still get it, and if you have a high energy or physical defense, you could totally steal it out from under someone at the end of the turn instead of just contesting it, which is a neat little factor that you can put in there. But you could also move over and just roll nothing and suffer for it minus a point. But that was a reason that they're good, and then the other reason we thought they were good is that there's some neat effects that happen if you're standing next to them. Much like Cosmic Invasion, you can get placed, right? You can get trapped. Sometimes those are good things. Sometimes they're
And
absolutely devastating. So it's just cool to have a nice little extra thing in there that they've added from the Crisis. You had something
can
to
I
add?
say, yeah, this is just a personal note, but Sword is so much fun. I love the
Oh yeah,
G shape.
yeah,
I love the effect of control more and push somebody. I wish that there was more G shape in the game, but because if you asked me to talk about any other sword games that I've had, I probably couldn't cite specific examples because just losing those uncontested rolls is all that sticks in my head. It's like, why did that even happen?
yeah. Exactly. I totally agree. Um, all right. So without further ado, I felt like we addressed 15 threat pretty well. We addressed the 20 threat pretty well. We talked about research station crisis. We talked about pay to flips as the entirety of crisis. There are four of them out there currently. Let's we don't have a lot of time left, so unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna make it to the schedule. We'll talk about that next week. But let's play the game before we finish out here. And I've asked these two to come up with three characters that are easy, medium, and hard to test the other one with, as well as myself. We're all gonna participate here. And so the game that we play on this podcast, I just call it the character game. But basically, what happens is one of us will give another one of us a character. It is selected by us. One of the first one we give will be an easy one. The second round will be medium, and the last round will be hard. What we're doing is we're not revealing what the character is, but slowly revealing from the bottom from the bottom of the character card its abilities, and the person that we're presenting this to has to guess it over the course of the first, second, and third ability. If they get it on the first ability, which is often the case for the easy characters, they will get 5 points. If they guess it on the second ability, they will get 3 points, and if they guess it on the last ability, it is 1 point. We are competing, the three of us, to get the most points, and whoever wins has unlimited bragging rights until the next week, and can lord it over the other two, because that's how we roll. Would either of you like to go first? I believe I asked Dustin you to prep some for Ian, you to prep some for me, and then I have prepped some for Dustin.
Oh, I had it reversed. I thought it was me prep for Devin.
That's fine. We can do it that way. Mine will work for either of you. And then Ian, do you have some for Dustin then?
I mean, I won last week, so
yeah,
give me whatever
you get to do whatever you want because you won last week.
This character, I don't think you've personally played him. You might have, because you have a crazy amount of games.
All right.
But his last ability is pretty unique, name-wise, and that's Quick Draw.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna say Hawkeye.
No.
Oh.
Second ability.
Okay.
Yeah, second ability is Hit and Run.
How is that a Hawkeye? What am I missing? What am I missing here? Is it Cyclops?
It is Cyclops.
Okay, all right. Wow, I can't believe I missed that.
A fast draw.
Hold on. Is Hawkeye's final ability also Quick Draw? No, it's Fast Draw. Oh my god.
Huge difference between fast draw and quick draw.
How stupid is that?
Think about it.
All right.
So that might be a unique one, which is really the easiest I can give you.
Oh
I'm
man,
a little disappointed.
All right, so
make it easier for you, Devin.
First character of the game given out, Hawkeye from Dustin to me. I got it on the second ability, which scores me 3 points. It was supposed to be the easy one. I just mixed it up with another one. I totally should have had that, I think. But whatever. I've got 3 points on the board. Let's shift it over to Ian. Would you like to go next?
All right, so this is for Dustin, right?
Yes.
All right, first one's Tangling Vines.
Tangling Vines. So that's a plant-based one. I haven't played him, so I don't know if he has this ability, but that seems like Man-Thing?
No.
Oh, that was a good guess. That was a good guess, but
I figured this is more easy because it's like kind of 50-50.
All right.
Second one's Living Plant.
Second ability. Oh man, that doesn't help. That sounds more like Man-Thing.
Living Plant.
Okay, second ability, Living Plant.
Vines.
For 3 points.
It's Groot then? He's a tree.
It is Groot.
Oh, got Groot. All right, Dustin ties it up. 3 points.
Based superheroes.
So we got myself at 3 points getting on the second ability, and Dustin with 3 points getting on the second ability. Ian, I'm going to give you an actual easy one, like we were supposed to do. And there is no way that you don't get this on the first ability. Otherwise, I'll be very disappointed in you. The first ability at the bottom of the character's card is called Gem Bearer, Reality and Time.
Reality and Time.
Who holds Reality and Time?
Who the hell holds Reality is the thing.
Oh my
god. I'm just thinking of Corvus.
Okay, I will say it can't be Klaatu for you just joining this game. That has to be the full amount of the ability. Thanos has all of the gems, so I couldn't be only giving 2. I had to give the full superpower, and he has to guess it off that. So it is.
I mean, I'm saying it's Corvus.
He's
the only other reality.
That is correct. It is Corvus Glaive. Okay. So Ian,
it's just we never see him with time.
Leading the pack with 5 points on the board, getting his easy guess on the first try.
Interesting.
Now we're gonna move on to the medium characters. So the idea for medium is that the opponent should not guess this on the first ability. It should take until the second ability to be able to get this character. Dustin, why don't you kick us off?
So I have one. I feel like it might be too easy. You're definitely gonna get it on the second one.
Okay.
So the first one is Asgardian.
Oh man, that's like a list. Oh man, so I just have to guess an Asgard character. Is it one that I hate? Can I ask that?
I'm not gonna tell you. 'Cause
Okay, all
I
right.
think you're gonna get it on the second one.
All right, Asgard. Let's go Hela.
No.
All right. Well,
Second
there was a good
ability-
chance I wasn't getting that one.
Second ability, Forfend.
Forfiend? Is that Heimdall?
Forfend. It
Heimdall?
is.
Yeah, I've played with Heimdall a lot recently, so
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
So
All right.
I knew you'd get it on the second one, but I was like, oh, Asgardian.
Yeah, Asgardian leaves what, like 10 characters for me to guess?
I think the only two that don't have it are Bill and Jane, so 11.
All right. All right, that's fair. All right, so I took the lead with my second question, putting me up to 6. Ian's at 5 and Dustin's at 3. Why don't you follow up there, Ian?
All right, so we got flight and gem bearer power.
Flight and Gym Bearer power is the first ability.
Mhm.
Only power. Oh man, I
Is
think I
this-
have this.
Is this oh, it's not.
There's only
Black
one that I
Swan.
can
What-
think of.
What is the other one? She gives out like her attack can auto KO. Is that Black Swan?
Nope, not Black Swan.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, the second one should be the giveaway.
I think
Plucky
so.
attitude.
Oh,
Attitude, that's Star Lord, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot he could take
Always-
a power.
Yeah, weird, right?
I've never seen him with a power gem. I've never seen anybody play him with a power gem, but that's cool.
I checked Black Swan though. I was right. She is flight gem power.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it was a good guess. Absolutely. All right, and then so that puts Dustin scoring 3 as well, tying it up 6-6, and Ian has 5. So 6 for me, 6 for Dustin. Ian's got 5. All right, Ian, I got one for you. I think that you're not gonna. I don't want to do that one because I feel like you wouldn't get it till the last one. But
Well, that's kind of hard, right?
yeah, that's hard. All right, so this one I feel like you get in the second one though. It is the first one's immunity to bleed. First ability,
Luke
bottom of the
Cage.
card. That is incorrect. It is not Luke Cage. Good guess though. He does have an
I
immunity to
hope
bleed.
it's like Sentinel Mark IV, and then it's like, no, it's the other one.
Oh yeah, that'd be funny. I'm like, no, the other Sentinel Mark IV. You can bring 2.
Yeah.
All right, the second ability for 3 points is called Organic Steel.
Oh, Colossus, right?
That is correct. It is Colossus.
Yeah.
All right,
Yep.
so Ian once again takes it away from us, scoring 3 points from his previous 5, putting him up to 8. Dustin and I are tied at 6. Going into the last question on the hard characters, the idea is that the opponent should not guess this until the last third ability, scoring 1 point. But if they get it sooner, obviously they get more points. So Dustin, what do you got for him?
Okay. Healing factor 1 and flight.
Okay.
I think I actually, that's funny.
That'd be funny if you guessed it right out the gate.
Well, it's for you, Devin.
Oh,
Yeah.
I definitely thought he was giving it to you
Yeah.
for a moment. That's hilarious. So flight, healing factor 1.
Yep.
I have played with this character recently, I think. Is it Cassandra Nova?
It is not.
Oh!
Good bait and switch though.
Oh, you had me. You had me.
I wish I could say I knew what
I know.
Cassandra Nova did.
I wasn't even thinking that
I
either.
did not do that intentionally.
Oh, that's
Uh,
funny.
Second ability,
Okay.
hostile takeover.
Hostile takeover.
Mm-hmm.
Flight,
It's a pretty unique name.
healing factor, hostile takeover. Oh man, I am spacing. Hmm.
This is a good hard one.
Yeah, this is
I actually
definitely.
had this as my hard one for you as well too. Funny enough.
Did you really? That's
Yeah, I
hilarious.
did.
Uh,
Just take a shot in the dark.
yeah, I guess I'll just take a shot. Let's go Deadpool?
No.
He's healing factor too. Yeah. All right.
You'll get white as well too. Remember.
Yeah.
So healing factor 1, flight, hostile takeover, final ability, airlift.
Oh man. Oh man. It's a good thing I didn't look at the chat for my own one, because they're guessing Angel, and that's my guess on the third ability. Angel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, chat. I can't look and cheat off you guys, or else I would have. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is Angel. I score 1 point, putting me up to a solid losing 7 points to Ian's 8.
Ooh.
See,
Okay.
I thought it was the names were pretty unique, and I didn't know if you had played with this character. So my guess was if you
I've
did, you'd
played
get
with
it
Angel
right
like
away.
once,
Yeah.
and the flight healing factor led me to believe it was Cassandra Nova, and
Yep.
then like the hostile takeover made me think of like mind magic. So I was like, how is it not Cassandra? That's funny. All right, well, moving along to Ian for Dustin. You got a chance to take it. I've already lost this game. Can you beat me and maybe put yourself in the lead against Ian?
All right.
We still
So number one, we got stealth.
Oh God.
So many characters.
Now I'm trying to think of a character who just has stealth. Black Widow 1, the 2 threat.
Nope.
That'd be funny
Nope.
if he insta guessed it.
Yep. All right. Number two is can't touch this.
Stealth can't touch
Can't
this.
touch this. MC Hammer?
Is that Spider Woman?
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Okay.
Although it is
Oh,
kind
Shantwell
of close.
Crawler. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Third one is called phase rush.
Oh, this is Vision, isn't it? No. Okay, it's my guess, but it's wrong.
Oh man. I actually beat Dustin. What was it?
All right. That is Shadowcat.
Shadowcat. Both of the
Hey.
people in chat guessed Black Widow, and I mean, you guessed that first, but wow.
It's
Okay.
weird because it's like if you think about it, you're like, well, of course that makes a lot of sense, but you just don't see a lot of Shadowcat. I feel like.
Well, the only time I've ever talked about Shadowcat, I forget what I called her, but it was not her name or Shadowcat, and Michael Fulmer got mad. He's like, her name is literally in the chat.
Oh man, that's funny.
Nice.
Okay.
All right, hit me.
All right, you ready, Ian? This one
Yeah.
will be difficult, and I don't even know if you're gonna get this one on the last one, but good luck. The first
Yeah.
one is flight and immunity to bleed and poison.
Archangel.
That is incorrect. Connor put in chat that he was about to say Shadowcat since she's one of his that he runs.
Nice.
All right, Ian, you are you're in the lead, so basically you have to do nothing to win this. But can you at least get 1 point off of this? All right, so you have flight, immunity to bleed, and poison. The second ability is called analyze and annihilate.
This is something old Mark Prim, right?
It is not. That is incorrect.
Okay.
All right, ready for the last one? I feel like this is going to give it away, but I still don't know if you'll get it because there's more out there. So we got annihilate, analyze, and annihilate, and the last ability is called all will be metal.
Oh. All will be metal. I want to say this is Ultron then, right? Ultron. Oh, geez.
Cannot confirm or deny until you tell me which one.
Well, I gotta probably guess which one it is, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
because there are two Ultrons. That is.
Yeah, it's an Ultron. Analyze that, all will be metal. I think this is Ultron 1, right? Yeah, Ultron 1.
That is a good guess. You got it correct. Chat guessed Ultron 2. Ultron 1 has those 3 abilities. Flight.
Ultron, yeah, it's like Ultron 2. His weird move thing has something to do with like blood or something, right?
So
It's
Ultron
like,
2 has flight, immunity to bleed, and poison. His second ability is I will create a better age, which talks about getting his drones back when you destroy a terrain.
right.
And then his third one would have been Metal Mind, which is similar to the Ultron 1's third ability that I would have given, but really the drones would have given him away.
Right.
Yeah, I think that I was with Ultron 2 right until the end, and even if you had read Ultron 2, I think I would have said Ultron 1.
Connor in the chat said, I played Ultron once with Sin leadership, and I was like, nah, this isn't it. And let me tell you, we agree wholeheartedly. Ultron 1 is not it, and neither is
Yikes.
Sin's leadership. I'm sorry that you had to experience that at any point in your life, because I definitely did. All right, Ian pulling out an extra point, putting it up to 9. Myself at 7, and Dustin not scoring any points in that last round, leaving you at 6. So I can brag against Dustin, and Ian can brag against both of us because he's better than us now for at least a week until the paradigm shifts and we overtake Ian. Yeah, thanks for playing it, guys. I know it's a fan favorite that Connor piped up in the chat as soon as I talked about it. But like I said, we don't have time tonight for the 2025 schedule release. But hey, we have 361 days left in the year to talk about that. So until next time, keep your eyes on the forecast, and may your games always be sunny. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Later.